Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.
Alhamdulillah Ramana Ustaz. Selamat pagi Dr. Edmi. Assalamualaikum Dr. Edmi.
Waalaikumsalam Pak Ari, selamat pagi.
Alhamdulillah telah bergabung bersama kita Bapak Dr. Rizki Edmi Edison selaku pemateri kita hari ini. Qad hadara al-yawm ayuhal asatidzah muhadiruna yani Doktor wa huwa tabib Rizki Edmi Edison Ph.D. wa huwa ma'ana al-yawm li ilqa'i al-muhadarah an ilmu al-aqsab wa sayakun ra'isul jilsah bil lughah injiliziyah ba'din yakni ukhtina Finka Salsabila. Assalamualaikum Finka.
Waalaikumsalam Pak.
Oke, sudah siap ya?
Iya Pak.
Baik. Dokter Edmi, bagaimana dok? Assalamualaikum.
Oke, baik.
Sudah sehat dok ya?
Alhamdulillah sudah semakin membaik. Ini meetingnya saya tinggalin aja dulu.
Super luar biasa nih, super sibuk ini dokter kita ini. Oke, langsung saja saya serahkan kepada moderator. Silakan Mbak Finka untuk menyampaikan ininya dalam bahasa Inggris ya. Karena mayoritas peserta kita ini berbahasa Arab, Dr. Edmi, tapi mereka paham bahasa Inggris insyaallah.
Oh begitu, saya pikir ini pakai bahasa Minang, bukan ya?
Indah apa? Nggak bisa.
Oke.
Pakai bahasa Minang ya, silakan.
Baik Pak, kita langsung mulai saja ya Pak ya.
Silakan.
Ya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wa bihi nasta'inu ala umuri dunya waddin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajmain amma ba'du. Let me introduce myself. My name is Finka Salsabila and I'm the moderator for this delightful course. Hello everyone, how are you today? I hope you're doing great in this beautiful day. So today we're going to discuss about neuroscience and a language. But before we get into the main course, I'd like to give you some of the previews of this material. And I think all of you, my friends, already know what is meant by neuroscience and a language. Is there any connection about it? What kind of connection about it? Okay, so the neuroscience of a language is a branch of cognitive neuroscience, a field aimed to understand the relationship between our mental experience and our biology, with emphasis on the brain in the context of our bodies. We, human beings, have many mental abilities that can be studied scientifically. Many researchers are interested in understanding the neurobiological basis of a memory or the origin of emotions or attention, and so on, trying to understand how language, the ability to produce and comprehend language, to acquire a native tongue, or to learn a foreign language relates to the brain is the task of the neuroscience of a language. All right, so dear all audience, in this Zoom meeting, I just explained a little overview of today's material. Now, please allow me to read the CV of our amazing speaker, mashallah, who has a great achievement and also who is very competent in this field. All right, so let me begin. Name, Mr. Dr. Rizki Edmi Edison, Ph.D., head of the Neuroscience Center at University Muhammadiyah, Professor Dr. HAMKA. Email Rizki Edmi Edison at uhamka.co.id. And profession, CEO, the Brain Beta Lab Indonesia, head of the Neuroscience University of Muhammadiyah, Professor Dr. HAMKA, head of Neuroscience Lab C-Tech Labs, Edward Technology, Research Assistant, Department of Neurosurgery, GT Medical University. Education, doctoral degree, Neurosurgery Department in GT Medical University. Master degree, Medical School in University Andalas or UNAD. Bachelor degree, Medical School in University Andalas. Expertise, applied neuroscience, neuroimaging, neuropsychology, and neurosurgery. All right, so my friends, I have read the CV of our speaker this morning. And now, please allow me to greet him first. Good morning, Mr. Rizki Edmi Edison. Assalamualaikum.
Good morning, Finska. Waalaikumsalam.
How are you today, sir?
Fine.
Alhamdulillah. I hope you're always in Allah's protection. Amen. Thank you, sir, for joining us in this beautiful day. So for not wasting our time, let's begin our course today. But before that, I'd like to remind you all, friends, to stay focused when the material are being delivered by Mr. Rizki Edmi Edison, and prepare your pen and book, write the important points of the material, and stay on camera in the meeting Zoom, but the microphone is in the off mode in order the activities can be run smoothly. All right, so to Mr. Rizki Edmi Edison, the time and place is yours.
Okay, thank you, Finska. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone.
Assalamualaikum.
Well, about 2 months ago, Mr. Ari sent me a message. He told me that Faculty of Islamic Studies of HAMKA will hold an international seminar. And one of the topic that would like to present to all of you is about relation of language and neuroscience. That's why, as a director of Neuroscience Center UHAMKA, it is a big honor for me to get such kind of invitation. For the first, actually, I will be the speaker at the 5th July, but unfortunately at that time, I got COVID-19. I got the treatment and I'm on the recovery right now. But I really hope that I could give you a presentation, sharing a knowledge so we could discuss together. Please let me share my presentation, Finka. Okay. Share. The topic that I would like to present to you right now is about neuroscience and language. The committee gave me 60 minutes for presentation, but if you would like to do the presentation based on our understanding of how human brains works, actually 60 minutes is too long. The optimal time for giving presentation is about just 20 minutes. So I will give you the presentation about 20 or 30 minutes, and I really hope we could discuss much more after that. The title is about neuroscience and language. And this is my CV. Finka just told everyone about my CV. And well, actually, I lived in Japan for 15 years. The first period, when I was 2 years old until 7 years old, when I was in the first grade of elementary school, and the second period while I was in the 5th grade of elementary school until 6th grade, and the third period while I was taking my doctoral degree in Japan. So this is an interesting, there are two interesting in these cases. The first one, I took doctoral degree of neurosurgery. Actually, what I did in Japan is doing the operation to treat some disorder of the human brain. I look the real human brain, I did the operation, I also did the research about the human brain. Went back to Indonesia in 2015, I decided to develop applied neuroscience. how our understanding about the human brain could implement it in many fields, such as education, such as marketing, such as management, combine engineering and neuroscience, combine psychology and science, and one of them is combine our understanding of language and human brain. That's why I could be here in front of you right now. And the second thing that really interesting about my experience is I was born in Indonesia, but I went to Japan when I was 2 years old in the critical period. I learned Indonesian language, and in the critical period, I also learned Japanese language at the time. But when I went to Japan on the third period, I was an adult, 25 years old. I speak Indonesian fluently. I could speak English fluently, but unfortunately on the third period, I couldn't speak Japanese at all because I forget all of the Japanese language that I did when I was on the critical period from 2 years old until 7 years old. So about what will you learn at this time is actually my own experience. How our brain processes the language, the mother language, the foreign language on the critical period and on adult period. I really hope it could increase about your knowledge about neuroscience and language. Before we discuss about language, I'm sure it is not an uncommon thing in your life. I'm really sure that you already know about the dominancy of the right side brain and the left side brain. There is a sentence, right side dominant and the left side dominance. First, let me ask you some question to Miss Hala Khalil. Good morning, Miss Hala Khalil. Assalamualaikum.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Have you ever heard about the right or left human brain dominancy?
Yeah.
What do you think about it, Mrs. Hala?
I think it's different thinking between the human beings. Some of them use the left side more, and some of them use the right left, the another one more than yeah.
Excellent, excellent, very good. Thank you very much, Ms. Hala.
Thank you.
Now, please let me give a question to Mr. Bagas Prasetyo. Mr. Bagas, have you ever heard about right or left dominancy? What do you think about it? Okay, let me give a question to Mrs. Ismahani Akma. Mrs. Ismahani, have you ever heard about the right and left dominancy?
Yes, doctor.
What do you think about it, Mrs. Ismahani?
Right dominance and left dominance are usually about mathematics or linguistic dominance.
Okay, very good, very good. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ismahani.
Welcome.
Now, please let me give the last question to third person. Mr. Salif Masaman. Mr. Salif Masaman, what do you think about right or left dominancy of human brain? Okay. Let me ask to Mrs. Mananya Sohnai. Ms. Mananya Sohnai, what do you think about this? About right dominancy and left dominancy? This is very important thing. What do you think about it? Okay, we actually have two answers, very good answer, and I'm really afraid it's a hoax. Most of the person, when I asked about this question, have you ever heard about right dominancy of human brain or left dominancy of human brain? There are two kinds of answer that they gave to me. The first one is the right side of human brain control the left side of the human body. The left side of the human brain control the right side of human body. It's true, but that's not the main point. That's not the meaning of right dominancy of left dominancy. The second one, when I give question to someone about the meaning of right dominancy and left dominancy, most of them give the answer. The person with left side brain dominancy have an ability in critical thinking, in mathematics, in decision making. But someone who have the right side dominancy of the human brain have an ability in creative thinking, in social communication, in art, etc. It's totally hoax. About creative thinking, about critical thinking, about mathematics, about art, or etc. that related to decision making, rational thinking, and creative thinking, it's not about right dominancy or left dominancy. It's all about the frontal side of the human brain. As you could see in this slide, when we solve some mathematical problem, when we made a decision, when we rationalize something, when we think something, the parts of the brain then give the responsibility is not the right side or the left side. It's all about the frontal side of the human brain. So here is the question. If the critical thinking, mathematical problem solving, creativity is about the frontal side, so what is the real meaning of the right dominancy or the left dominancy? The answer is only one. It's about the language. Please understand, if we really want to know how the language is processed in the human brain, first we have to counter about the myth and hoax. Right dominancy and left dominancy is not about creative thinking or critical thinking or arithmetic or rationality. It's all about the language. Before I explain to you about the language on the human brain, let me give a little explanation to all of you why this kind of hoax occur in our life. About in 1960, there is a patient who get the disorder of epilepsy. Epilepsy is a disease that characterized by seizure that occurred from brain. If you want to treat the epilepsy, there are two kinds of steps that we could choose. The first one, treat with the drugs. If the drugs is not effective, we have to do operation to patient, brain surgery. Epilepsy is the seizure that occur in the human brain. In these cases, at 1960s, the seizure that occur in the human brain coming from the part of the brain that named corpus callosum. In this slide, all of you could see the human brain from the front side. This is the right side, and this is the left side. Human brain is not one organ. There is two organs of the human brain, and in the middle, there is corpus callosum that connect the right side and the left side. In the cases at the 1690s, the seizure is coming from the corpus callosum that connect the right and the left side. The neurosurgeon in America did the operation, take some part of the corpus callosum to reduce the occurrence of seizure. And at that time, not just the neurosurgeon who treat the patient, as neuropsychologists also did some research about her. What will happen if the corpus callosum that located in the center of the brain that connect the right side and the left side of the brain is getting some disorder, did some operation, part of it is taken, what will happen? He told us, based on the research, there is some condition, but unfortunately, some neuroscience enthusiasts at the time mistaken the message by this researcher. They told all of a person, the right side of the brain have function like this, the left side of the brain have function like this, and so on until right now. So if you do some training, how to improve the right side of the brain, how to improve the left side of the brain, it's totally hoax, useless. Now, let's talk about the language. If the right dominancy or left dominancy is related to language, so my question is to Mr. Muhammad Bahe. Mr. Muhammad Bahe, if right dominancy or left dominancy is related to language, my question is, which part is it? Right side or left side? What do you think about it, Mr. Muhammad Bahe?
I think it's the left dominancy because definitely control.
Very good, very good. So you give the answer, the center of the language is on the left side of the human brain. Very good. Now, please let me give a question to Mrs. Miatin Rahmawati. Mrs. Miatin, what is your answer for this question? If right dominancy or left dominancy is about center of language, which part is it actually? Right side or left side? Okay, let me give a question to Mrs. Warada Nijarun. Mrs. Warada Nijarun, what is your opinion about this? Okay, it's okay. How about Mrs. Amni Juhari? Okay, the last one. How about Mr. Bagas Prasetyo? What is your opinion about this? If right dominancy and left dominancy is about the center of language, which part is it actually? Right side or left side?
I think both of them, but yes.
Very good, very good, very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Bagas. Well, the correct answer is it could be left side, it could be right side. If we really want to know which side of the brain that have the function for center of language, we have to do some operation or test named WADA test. We have to block one part of artery that give blood to one side of the brain. Unfortunately, this kind of test could only be done by neurosurgeon or radiologist. Mr. Arif Fahmi, Mrs. Finka may not do such kind of test. So, is there anything or approach that we could do to analyze the center of language of someone? The answer is yes. Based on the research, based on the constitution, the person who always use right hand in daily life have center of the language on the left side. More than 90% of 90% of people who always use right hand in their daily life have center of language on the left side of the human brain. More than 90%, but only about 60% who always use the left hand in their life have the center of language on the left side. So the question is, which hand do you use in your daily life? If you answer the right hand, I could say there is more than 90% probability that your center of language is located on the left side of the human brain. This is very important. That's why in this slide, I give you the picture of the human brain of the left side. The external part of the human brain of the left side. This is the front side. This is the back side. In general, human brain could categorize as 4 lobes. The first one is frontal lobes. The second one is the parietal lobes. The third one is the temporal lobe. And the fourth one is the occipital lobe. The frontal lobe is located on the frontal. This part of the human brain has responsibility for critical thinking, rationality, creativity, and so on. But please look at this, everyone. This is the part of the human brain named motor cortex that located on the frontal lobe. And this one that located on the parietal lobe named as sensory cortex. The left side of motor cortex control our right side body. The left side of the sensory cortex will process the sensory item from the right side of your body. But our main focus is about this. Please look the color of the orange. There is an area named as Broca's area, and there is an area named as Wernicke area. If we talk about the language, these two kind of area is very crucial. The story begins from 1860. At the time, a neurosurgeon named Broca found a patient with a unique disorder. What is the situation of the patient that treated by Broca, a neurosurgeon, at 1860? The patient, although do not have any problem in his tongue or his limb or the motor cortex of the brain, they cannot speak fluently. The patient cannot speak fluently. The patient just say tan, 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 tan. Tan is the patient's name that treated by Paul Broca. At the time, Paul Broca didn't have any idea what kind of disorder that the patient have at the time. Later, when the patient died, the Broca, this neurosurgeon, did the autopsy, look the real brain of his patient, and he found that the patient has the lesion in this site, in this area. At the time, this area didn't have any name. Later, Broca found again about 8 other patients with exact condition. There is no problem in the tongue of the patient. There is no problem in the motor limbic of the patient, but the patient cannot speak fluently. Although the patient understands what the Broca said. From that moment, because Broca find the lesion in the frontal lobe area on the left side, he named the disease as Broca aphasia. He named the region here as Broca's area. About 10 years later, a neurologist from Germany named Wernicke found some unique patient with unique disorder. It's quite similar with the patient that treated by Paul Broca. But the patient of Wernicke, although do not have any problem of the tongue of the patient, although the patient could speak fluently, but unfortunately, the speak by the patient, the sentence that speak by the patient have no meaning. Wernicke give some question to patient like this. What's your name? Wernicke asked the patient. The patient answered, well, I did go to market and buy some food and etc. But the questions of the Wernicke is, what's your name? Wernicke found the lesion in this part of the human brain, on the temporal lobe. Later, this part named as Wernicke area. The condition of the patient is, although the patient could speak fluently, but it is nonsense sentence, no meaning of the sentence, because the patient cannot understand what others talk to them. For Broca area, if we have the lesion on the Broca area, the patient could understand what people talk to them, but they cannot process in the human brain what they will talk about. On contrary, for the patient that have the lesion on the Wernicke area, although they could speak fluently, but no meaning at all, not related with the patient, they cannot understand what people talk to them. Based on these cases, we could understand that the center of the human language is located on the left side of the human brain. And from these cases, we could understand while we communicate with each other, with other person, there is two parts of the brain that have significant role. People talk to you, your ear catch the sentence by them, they talk by them, and proceed in the awareness area. And you think the answer at the frontal side. After that, from the frontal side, we'll give the information what you will talk about on the broadcast area. So if we do not have a good function of the broca and learning area, we cannot speak fluently. The question is, I'm sorry, here I give you the MRI of the human brain that show us the lesion in broca area and Wernicke area. This is the picture of the MRI of the human brain from axial side. It means we see the human brain from the axial. This is the right side. This is the left side. This is the frontal side. This is the temporal side. We could see here the picture of the left side, lesion in Broca's area, located in the left hemisphere, left side of the human brain, on the frontal lobe. This patient, although understand what the doctor or the nurse told to patient, but they cannot speak fluently. On the other side, based on the picture on the right side, we could see there is a lesion in the temporal lobe, especially on the Wernicke's area. This person, although could speak fluently, but he or she cannot understand what other people talk to him. We already know, in general, the process of the language processing in the human brain. But there is a question to all of us. Most of us from Indonesia, our mother language is Bahasa, Indonesian language. Later on, you learn about Arabic language or English language. The question is there any neural basis differences between the first and the second language? From the previous slide, you already know this is the process in the human brain while we talk to each other. Mr. Ari talked to me in Indonesian language. But later, I learned Arabic language. When I talk in Arabic language, is the process same between Indonesian and Arabic? Please understand the story that I told you before. I went to Japan 3 periods. In the critical periods, when I was in the 5th grade, and the 3rd one when I was in adult. When I was in the critical period, 2 years old until 7 years old, I learned Japanese language, precisely same approach like I learned Indonesian language. But when I was adult, 25 years old, I could speak Indonesian fluently, but I cannot speak Japanese language. How could I process the Japanese language when I was first learned this kind of language when I was 25 years old. At the first time, when I learned Japanese language in the 25 years old, when I am an adult already, the first thing that what I have to do is to memorize the lexical noun or verb. I memorize them and I try to talk based on my memory. But Indonesian language, because I use it since I was in the critical period, I could speak Indonesian language implicitly, unconsciously. But when I was 25 years old, while I learned Japanese language, I have to speak Japanese language explicitly, not implicitly. Why? Because I have to memorize every noun that I remember when I talk in Japanese language. That's the first time. But later on, because I speak Japanese language every day, and I hear Japanese language from other teachers in Japan, the process is changed from the explicit approach, explicit method, to implicit method. I started to speak Japanese language like I talk in Indonesian language. Based on this understanding, what you have to do if you really would like to learn Arabic language if you are Indonesian, or if you are from Arab and you really would like to learn Indonesian language, what you have to do? The answer is please understand the concept of the memory in the human brain. How to mastery the second language. Please understand that the memory could divide it as two kinds. The first one is explicit. The second one is implicit. I give you the example of the explicit memory and implicit memory with the picture of someone who is studying and someone who is driving. But I forgot something. The very best example of implicit memory and explicit memory is like we are reading Al-Fatihah while we are praying. Please remember this. When we were young, about 7 years old, we learned how to do praying. We try to memorize Al-Fatihah. At the first time, we said Bismillahirrahmanirrahim when we were young, 7 years old. And then we try to memorize the second ayat. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. And then Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. And then we have to memorize every ayat at a time. But because we repeat it 17 times a day, every day in our life, when we are in adult period right now, although our mouth say Bismillah, we didn't have to do, and we don't have to do any effort to memorize ayat, the next ayat. That's the very good example between the explicit memory and implicit memory. Implicit memory will occur if we repeat the explicit memory. This is the same exact process if you would like to learn a new language. We have to make ourselves to repeat the language, repeat many times. we have to hear the foreign language many, many times. That's why when I was on the third period in Japan, when I'm getting the PhD on neurosurgery, I talked to my professor. I told him, Professor, I'm in Japan right now. Please allow me to do surgery here, not just research. And he said, yes, it's okay. But I cannot speak English or Indonesian to nurse, to other doctors, or to patient. I have to speak in Japanese language. What I could do to improve my capability on the Japanese language in the short time, based on the understanding of the memory, I have to shift the explicit memory to implicit memory. So what I did at the time is not learning the Japanese language by book note. If I try to learn the language by book, it means I only learn it by using the explicit memory. I have to make myself surrounded by the Japanese language. So what I did at the time is I always watching TV with subtitle, not Indonesian subtitle, but Japanese movie with Japanese subtitle. I hear what the actor said and I read what the actor said. And I always try to talk with everybody, not by using English, but by using the Japanese language. What I try to remember the noun of Japanese language explicitly at the first time, shifted to implicit memory. This is the clue. If you really want to mastery the Arabic language, what you have to do is not just memorizing the noun from the book, but you have to repeat it many times in your daily life. By understanding the process in our human brain, we could improve our capability to speak other language. That's why at this time, I could speak in 3 languages. I really hope that I could speak Arabic language. And actually, I did it with Mr. Ari. I attend 2 or 3 times, but I cannot master the Arabic language. Why? I didn't make the circumstance, the environment of myself as Arabic environment. I only learned it from the book 2 or 3 times. It's useless. So if you really would like to learn a new language, please put yourself in the environment with such kind of language. That's my presentation, Mrs. Finka. I really hope that we could discuss much after this. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rizki Edmi Edison, who already delivered the amazing material. Well, friends, now we are come to the Q&A session or question and answer session. There will be one session for 3 questions. But before that, please raise your hand using the button raise hand in the meeting Zoom. And don't forget to mention your name and where did you come from. Okay, so let's begin for the Q&A session. And any question, maybe? Oh, okay. There's already one question. To Mr. Garib Barakat. Okay, to Mr. Garib Barakat, you can ask the question.
Hello, this is Garib Barakat. I'm Egyptian. I'm experienced in teaching English, okay? And my question is, how can we overcome some diseases concerning brain at first by training or to go to the doctor at first? So my question again, if you please listen, can we go to the doctor directly? At first we can go to the doctor, or we can train the learner or the person or the human being to utter, to speak. What can we do? Can we go randomly, haphazard, or to have some steps concerning solving this problem?
Okay, so that's the question. Thank you for your question, Mr. Garib. And now I give this to Mr. Rizki Edmi Edison for the response. Sir, you may respond for the question.
Okay. Mr. Gripe, thank you very much for your question. This is very important thing actually. What should we do to overcome this disease of the brain? Directly go to doctor or try to solve the problem by ourselves? Please let me my answer based on my experience. As the human being, it is common if we feel afraid to go to doctor if we have the problem. Not because we are afraid about the doctor, but we are afraid that we have a disease. That's the main problem, the first problem. The second problem is we are afraid to go to doctor about the how could we pay to treat the disease. That's why when we have some problem, it's common to talk with other first. It's common actually, but please understand this. If we try to search about our situation by ourselves from Google, there is a condition later that we have so much disease and it's not good for ourselves. And the second one, because we try to search the information by ourselves on the Google, we think we do not have any disease. And this is not good too. So what should we do? My suggestion is to everyone, if you feel any uncomfortable situation or you think this is a disease, try to search help from the doctor. Well, actually, if you have friend who has a profession as a doctor, it's very good. But please understanding this also. As a patient, as the civil human, we have a right to get the second opinion. Second opinion is not from Google. The second opinion is not from YouTube. The second opinion is not from social media. The second opinion is also from doctor, but other doctor. So my suggestion to all of you, if you have any situation, please try to ask the doctor first. It's okay. It's much better than we try to solve it by ourselves.
I'm in gratitude for you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wright.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Roy Barakat. And now for the second question. There's already one. Hala Khalil.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, doctor.
Walaikum salam.
I want to ask about the repeated puzzle. We always see it in Facebook about the dress or sometimes shoes, and they ask about the color. And always the people divide it in two parts. Some people said like pink, another said no, it's blue. What's the analysis of this? Is it about using different sides of brain or no?
Okay, Thank you very much, Mrs. Hala, for your question. This is also actually an interesting. I also see such kind of quiz. They show us a picture of shoes, picture of dress. Someone say this is blue, someone say this is pink. Well, actually, this is not about which part of the brain that used to see at the color. While we analyze the color, actually the part of our body that have responsibility to do some analysis is not just brain. It started from eyes, and then go to nervous that name nervus opticus, and then go to our human brain, especially on the occipital side, at the back side of our human brain, and later we transform the information to the frontal side of the human brain. So the answer that given by the person while they see the picture on the social media is not related on the left side of the human brain or the right side of the human brain. It's really related from our eyes, from our nervus opticus, from occipital side of the human brain, and then to frontal side of the human brain. About your main question, is it related to right or left? Actually, it's not related to right or left. It's related based on the process from the front and from the back. That's the answer, Mrs. Hali.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Jazakumullah khair.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Halil. And yeah, reminder, if you're already asked a question, you may lower your raised hand. You may lower your hand.
If I'm not mistaken, a participant named Amira Sawida, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. I am Amira from Mecca, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Doctor, I want to ask you about the brain. Is there any certain time that brain stop learning language there?
Excuse me, pardon me?
Is there certain time that the brain stop learning language?
Oh, okay.
Because I'm talking 3 language, from the childhood, Arabic, English, and 3 language, but I understand 5 language. But the other two, I cannot speak it straight and very not good.
Okay.
It's my brain.
Okay. It's very good. Very, very good question, Mrs. Amira. And this is a very important thing that I have to explain to all of you. For the first, until 1980, there is an understanding that human brain cannot develop when someone reach age of 20. From childhood, adolescent, and adult of 20, the brain of the human could develop. From 20 years old, it cannot develop anymore. Only disease that could occur, that's on 1980s. But right now, we have a new understanding that the human brain has a process called neuroplasticity, and the second one is neuroregeneration. What does it mean? Neuroplasticity, this is the very important thing. Neuroplasticity is the situation that human brain can adapt with any situation in the human life. Neuroregeneration means actually that the nervous or the neuron of the human brain could always reproduce every time, no matter how old he or she is. And it is also applicable to neuroplasticity. Although you are 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, our human brain could always do adaptation. It means no matter how old you are, we could still learn a new thing. But based on this understanding, although we are 40, or although we are 50, or although we are 60 years old, we could still learn a new language. And please understand this. While we communicate with each other, please understand that there is two kinds of communication. The first one is verbal. The second one is non-verbal. The example of the verbal is, on this monitor, you could see my name, Dr. Edmi, Ph.D., PNU, Pusat Neuroscience HAMKA, Neuroscience Center HAMKA. You read that using your eyes and proceed in the human brain. That's the verbal language. Second one, I'm talking to you, to all of you right now. What you hear from my mouth, the sentence that coming from my mouth, taken by your ears and processed in your brain. There's also the verbal language. But my expression, my movement of the body, while I'm giving the presentation, catch by your ear and process in your brain, that's the non-verbal language. My tones, while I'm talking to all of you, is also non-verbal language. We, as a social entity, as a human, could understand what the meaning of other people while they are talking, not just from the verbal language, but also from the non-verbal language. I could understand what you talk about, although I do not really know the meaning of the lexical noun of what you are talking about, but I could understand the meaning based on your non-verbal language. Are you angry? Are you happy? How about your tone? So we could understand. That's why that's one of the methods that I use to learn Japanese language. Although I do not understand the meaning of the sentence or the words by my teacher told me, but I could understand it from interpretation of the non-verbal language. But the main problem, the main question of Mrs. Amira, you could read, you could write, but it's a little bit difficult to speak. It's okay. Why? As I explained to you before, there is a differences. Well, actually, there is no differences in the human brain between mother language or the foreign language. But when you learn about new language at the first time, you told me that you could speak 3 languages and you are learning about 2 other new languages. Very good. At the first moment, when you learn about new language, you use the explicit memory. You use that. It means if you want to talk about something, you have to memorize it first. What is the meaning of the noun A? What is the meaning of the word B? What is the meaning of the word C? It makes you feel nervous. When you feel nervous, the part of the brain named limbic system will take the function of the frontal lobe to think rationally. If you feel nervous, you cannot think clearly. It makes you, it will makes you cannot speak anything. Myself as Indonesian also cannot speak in front of other, although I'm using Indonesian when I feel nervous. So how to encounter my nervousness about this, as I told you before, from explicit memory to implicit memory. It means you have to surround yourself by the environment of the new language. So if you would like to speak with a new language, you already put yourself in the environment that will make you could speak implicitly. That's the point. At the first time, although I could speak, I could understand the Japanese language, I could read, but I cannot speak. I also get the problem at the first. But later, I shifted my situation from explicit to implicit. How to shift from explicit to implicit? I made myself surrounded by the Japanese language. So my suggestion to you is you also have to surround yourself with such kind of new language that you are learning right now.
Yes, thank you, doctor. Maybe the problem was that I am not other two language is not in my environment. Because of that, it's difficult to me to learn it. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
God bless you.
All right. So thank you. Thank you for Mr. Rizki, Edmi, Edison, and to all participants for the Q&A session. And Alhamdulillah, finally, we are come to the last agenda. And I would like to say thanks again for Mr. Rizki, Edmi, Edison, and all of the audience for the active participants. And right now, the conclusion of the presentation today is the center of human language is at the left brain. Two parts of brain significant role. When we talk, the communication to each other, and the frontal brain will be processed, and then the broca will accept what is the sentences are trying to say, and then it will deliver to ringnickel to be processed, what is the meaning of it, and try to make a new sentences for the answer of the conversation. And then there is also two important points for in the memory for us who would like to learn other languages are explicit and implicit. The other meaning is theory and practice. If you have to put yourself in the circumstances of a people who talk in the languages that we try to learn, and we try to speak for it. And if we do this over and over again, we can memorize the languages better. So that's the conclusion from me. Okay, and hopefully the presentation will give benefit for us. And last but not least, maybe there's one or two words from Mr. Rizki, Edmi, Edison that would like to say for the closing statement, so that we all make enthusiastic in learning and understanding new literature. To Mr. Rizki, Edmi, Edison, you may say the words.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Vinka. My closing statement is, please understand that our brain is always developing. There is a capability for adaptation. So if you would like to learn a new thing, don't ever feel afraid of your age. Don't ever feel afraid of your age. You always could learn a new thing, especially a foreign language. That's the closing statement from me.
Give applause to Mr. Rizki, Edmi, Edison.